and the Lulu, so once again that support focus with some of the bans. I just want to come back to that Kaiwei point with his bot lane. An interesting stat for you, in the first 15 minutes of the game he spends about 21 seconds in vicinity of Pilot, which is a very short period of time compared to Amazing, who spends about a couple of minutes down towards that bottom side of the map. So gonna have to see what the priority is here. Do you really think that we're gonna see Kikis focusing getting a carry up in that top lane?
I think that it would be worth trying. We saw in game one that Nisqy, the onus was very much on him to be that carry, to be that sort of playmaker. He wasn't quite able to have a successful time on it. And I think the Fnatic Academy, you take Blank off of Orianna, you shift him onto something that will give Nisqy a better matchup in terms of either the Cassiopeia or maybe even the Rise, where he has a few more options in terms of safety, but then you actually better set up Kikis to play more of this side lane pressure, better set him up to be able to have an impact in these fights.
How easy is it to have an impact into a Nautilus, though? White Knight has shown us he's able to play safe,
Rumble.
He's able to play into 2v1s. Does Rumble just shut him down, or is the Nautilus still going to be able to farm just under tower?
I mean, Nautilus can farm under tower in any matchup, right? But you, as a Rumble, you exert a lot more pressure. You have the opportunity to set up dives in the top lane. You have the ability to be more impactful in team fights. You have a lot more room. Speaking of room, it does look like that Fnatic, they're spicing things up in this room. Great segue. Great segue, I know, right?
They're playing in the kitchen a little bit, spicing up the room, seeing perhaps if they can steal away the recipe for PSG when they took that Zyra Ezreal in that bottom lane last time. This time, it's going to go over to Fnatic Academy. And once again, Kiwi has that Graves. So solidifying that jungle role alongside the top, and PSG, their draft is exactly identical to the last time we saw.
But it can't be now.
No, because the Zyra's been stolen away in the room, apparently.
Well, now remember, we are playing on patch 7.5. This is the patch that I do believe Miss Fortune did get some of her damage back, which means that even after the nerf, I mean, the nerf was pretty hefty. Now that she's been able to claw some of those gains back, the matchup into Zyra is a little bit better now. So Paris Saint-Germain, once again, looking for a favorable bottom lane. When you look at AD carries to possibly pick, you have to wonder, perhaps Caitlyn has to be the next priority for Pilot, because Ashe isn't the strongest into to Ezreal. You also don't really want to be picking Jhin into it. You could go for the Varus, but I don't think it's optimal. Thinking of other AD carries like Tristan, maybe the Cogmore, like, ooh, it's risky.
We saw the Caitlyn banned out last game.
We did.
So was a possibility. Lucian still on the cards as well. Varus there.
Oh,
Jhin.
Lucian, of course, Lucian.
Yeah. I think that with the Jhin ban, that's definitely targeted at Pilots. Played that a lot over this split, but I think Lucian is quite a good possibility.
I'm surprised that they would ban Jhin here, because often Ezreal was considered a quote-unquote counter-pick into the Jhin because of how well he can actually do into him during the laning phase.
I agree with you, but Pilot is very comfortable on that Jhin. Played it in 5.
Pilot's pretty comfortable on a lot of AD carries.
That's true, that's true. Doesn't seem to be able to phase him too much, but you can try and take away some of that comfort.
I guess it's just what Fnatic Academy don't want to play against, right? Like, the ultimate from Jhin is really obnoxious. Recently, I've actually been seeing Jin's shift over to Warlord's Bloodlust, and they now go back towards the carry build, like Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, that kind of itemization instead.
This is, of course, Warlord's Bloodlust before the change on 7.6, so still a relatively strong mastery. 7.6 really gutted that. Now it's going to be the Victor pick for Nisqy, and this is interesting because the last time he played this, I believe, was in Challenger Series qualification tournament, and he didn't have the best of times on that Victor when he played it. So obviously a lot of trust being put by Fnatic Academy into the ability for Nisqy to shut down whatever Blank picks in that mid lane.
The thing about blind pick Victor is arguably it's pretty safe because mainly he just has wave clear, but in the first few levels before he's able to get his upgraded hex score, it can actually be a really rough matchup because his wave clear isn't that strong. One of the advantages that he does have is his ability to duel, which is why I think that into a Vladimir, it's actually not the strongest pick because Vladimir can often out-trade him early on, so you can net some pretty solid advantages. So now I'm just thinking of pushing lanes, and I'm thinking in mids, Paris Saint-Germain have an early pushing lane, in bottom they have an early pushing lane, and in top, I think Fnatic need to try and get themselves a pushing lane. They need to get some kind of an advantage. They need to get Kikis on some kind of carry so that they have a lane to play around during the early phase.
Nar seems like that as well, although Akali is going to get locked in.
Yes! Yes, we have an Akali! I am excited. This is awesome. I wanted Kikis to play a carry, and he picked a Akali.
The thing I love about this as well is Koobs over there, when he heard you shouting, just pointed over to you like, yeah, my man, I know it, you know it, we all know it. Now, Akali was banned out last week by Schalke 04 against Fnatic Academy because Jisoo had been playing it a lot. Kikis, carry, Akali, they seem to mesh incredibly well here, Venius.
Oh, now we're going to be seeing a shift for the Fnatic playstyle. They're going to be playing around the top half of the map. Oh man, this is cool. This is really cool.
You're very excited about it, and we're going to delve into the Akali more when we get into the game.
Yes, we will.
Right now, talk to me about these lineups. Talk to me about what both the teams want to do.
Well, if you are Fnatic Academy, this time you're much more centered towards a 1-4-1 with the ability...
1-4-1, that's 6 players. Sorry, you've got one too many people there.
Sorry, when I think 1-4-1, I think it's because you use the minion wave as another side lane pressure. That's your additional 6th player, right? But it's a 1-4 composition, whereas for PSG, they've very much got a teamfight composition, similar to what they had in Game 1. Very much around playing objectives. The difference is now, though, they also have the ability to send someone off to a side lane. They can use the Vladimir to move off on to match up against the Akali, but that is such a volatile matchup as well, because it's very much dependent on who's able to get the early advantage and who can, and how well do you itemize in terms of the Assassin versus Vladimir.
Well, we are going to get onto the Summoners Rift for Game 2 here between Paris Saint-Germain and Fnatic Academy. Make sure you tweet at us at LOL Esports with hashtag PSG win if you think Paris Saint-Germain are going to go 2-0 up, and hashtag FNA win if you think Fnatic Academy will even out the series. You know what would be really funny, Vedius?
What?
If just for the entire game I avoided all conversations about Akali.
But you can't do that.
Never let you talk about it.
You can't do that.
Let's not talk about Akali. Let's talk about this bot lane matchup. No, come on. Let's hit on this Akali because it's a pick not often seen, and you were incredibly excited when it was locked in.
But first, what you have to do, ladies and gentlemen at home, tell your friends, tell your boyfriend, tell your girlfriend, tell your mum and dad. They need to tune in right now, because we have an Akali here in the Challenger Series. Also has one of my favorite skins in the whole game, right? But the reason why I need to talk to you about Akali is because she actually had a number of changes not too long ago, which means that her entire playstyle is very different. And the first thing is about her passive in particular, right? So early levels, every 8 seconds, you can see her weapons right now are actually glowing. One is glowing green, and the other is glowing red. On her first basic attack, she'll get a heal back, and on the second basic attack, she gets additional damage, right? This is actually really important when actually trying to trade in lane, and also her sustain during the laning phase. One of the big reasons as to why there was the possibility of her coming back. The other big ability to bear in mind is her Q. You'll see her throw out one of her weapons, and it has a second proc. So if you hit that proc, you get a bunch of bonus damage on top of it as well. So the usual trading pattern that you have is you auto attack, you Q, and then what you do is use your ult, which is her dash, which resets your auto attack, so you get the bonus damage from the second auto of your passive, and you proc the Q active damage as well. So you can trade people for huge chunks of damage while getting a fair amount of sustain back yourself. It's a really fun matchup. I mean, for the Nautilus, it's pretty boring because it just sits there and waits there. And Akali can't really do much up until the level 6 mark. So if you want to shut it down, it's early levels that you have to do it.
Definitely going to see jungle focus up towards the top side here. Last game, Fnatic seemed to err away from their usual playstyle of focusing amazing towards Kikis and trying to get Kikis ahead. Here, they have given him a carry. He needs to be the primary focus, and you have to think that Kyrie will know that. And maybe we'll start to see more 2v2 trades in the top lane. Kyrie's coming in for an early gank here onto Rales. It will get the make it rain down. Rales forced away. Didn't have to burn any summoners though. Kyrie just getting that early pressure down.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. There's that 21 seconds. Kyrie has spent bottom lane. Now
that's it for the
game. He's like, enjoy guys, that's it. I'm done now. See you later. Now, bear in mind, Fnatic Academy know that Kire is in that half of the map, and Amazing is completely ignoring him. He knows that Spiral has used Flash. He wants to try and punish it.
Coming in for the gank, Amazing, down towards the bottom side. No top lane focus for him. He wants this misfortune. Exhaust comes down, but there's the knock-up, there's the root, and there's the first blood for Fnatic Academy. However, Kyrie can come back in if they want to try and fight this. Pilot forced away too much. Fnatic Academy will take the trade.
Great decision from Amazing. There's no need to go topside when the enemy bottom line has just burnt their flash in an early gank. I felt like that the flash from Spiral was very overzealous. The point of it really, just to try and get a slowdown when you have no other follow-up CC, was always going to be risky and Amazing. very cleanly punishes it. So now the bottom lane of Fnatic Academy are going to get this early lead, and now they're diving onto Pilot.
Pilot does have flash, will jump away. Cly tanks up the turret and has to flash himself. And with Kyrie here, actually, Fnatic will be forced back. Sprazzle struts his stuff back into the lane. Says, "Do you miss me, folks?" Just for the time being. It's a lot of bot lane focus from both of these junglers early on.
Now the dive from Fnatic didn't go quite as smoothly as they would have liked, but they do get the flash out of Pilot. So the possibility for that dive to come again later on in the game is always available to them. This early game, so much more active compared to what we saw in game one. And the big difference is Kyrie, he didn't steal away any of the camps from Amazing. We saw Amazing not being shut down, not forced to change his jungle pathing up, which means that he's now free to stick to his playstyle, which is very much lane focused. He's very much about trying to get his laners ahead and try and build an advantage via just multiple games.
I just keep coming back to this Akali pick in my mind and wondering exactly how it's going to work, especially later on. Is it just about trying to focus down Pilot in fights? What does it give you when you get later on that's better than just a conventional Gnar or a conventional Echo in that top lane?
Well, I mean, the thing about Akali is people really don't understand how much damage she really does output in a 1v1. The problem you have with Akali is that she is only 1v1 damage, so in teamfights it's not as impactful and she's very easy to lock down. We might have to come back to that in a second because Spraddle, he has no flash, and Amazing has seen it.
Amazing's coming in for the flank Cly there as well. Spraddle will just walk back underneath the turret. Blank is forcing Nisqy behind his second tower here. And Nisqy is struggling in this. Blank has Ignite as well on this Vladimir, so he's trying to be very aggressive in that lane. The rest of Fnatic are going to try and come around because the Sanguine Pool's being used. Blank probably going to realize he's in a bit of trouble right now. Has got the flash. Amazing comes in. Here's Kyrie as well. Flash down. Blank tries to get away. Cannot escape, but Amazing's been ignited, and Kyrie just needs one more auto. The heal from Nisqy keeps him alive. Fnatic have taken 2 kills and lost nothing early on.
So again, another aggressive play punished by the side of Fnatic Academy. Blanc taking advantage of the early dominance that Vladimir has in this matchup to force Nisqy back, to force him underneath his turret, and his inability to trade is what is allowing Blank to build up such a big lead. But because he went for that dive, he used his pool, and that pool has a very long cooldown at early levels. It's about like 28 seconds at the level 1 mark, right? Which means that Fnatic had loads of time to punish him. They knew that that ability was down. He only has the flash. He didn't even get a chance to use it. And he ends up going down. This is going to alleviate a lot of pressure for Nisqy. I want to say that on his first back, he should be able to get the upgraded Hex score. But it's this pool right here. And I mean, you're welcome to count the seconds, but you can very well easily see that there is a big window with which you can punish him. And I love this gravity field that you have from Nisqy as well. Completely cuts off his escape. Arguably the smart thing from Blank would have been to flash over it, but even then, Amazing has flash too. So just accept the fact that you're dead. And
it's about 24 seconds.
About 24 seconds.
Yep, so 4 seconds off coming back off cooldown. And then the heal at the end as well, saving Amazing. This is much more the Amazing we expected to see. Game 1, he was shut down by Kyrie, invading his jungle, getting those early buffs away, stealing away the Razor Beaks as well. This game, Amazing's just been ganking all over the map. Spent a lot of time down towards that bottom side, knowing that Sprazzle had burned his flash. And this is actually his first blue buff, I believe. Taking it very late into the game, 7 minutes. Actually, we'll probably just donate this across towards Nisqy. Not even valuing that experience that he can get from it.
Yeah, it's fine though, because he got that early kill bottom. So in terms of experience, Amazing is just fine and dandy. Just like you are on this wonderful day, my friends.
I don't think I will ever be fine and dandy. I'll be satisfactory. I'm an Englishman. That's the best you'll ever get out of me.
Deirdre, pour me a cup of tea, damn it.
Who's Deirdre?
I was
just inventing old woman's names.
If someone were to bring me tea, I would have named her Deirdre.
Fnatic trying to set up down towards the bottom side once again. It's always odd that when you pick a name out of a hat, you can sort of say, is that an old name or a young name? It's like Bob. Imagine a baby called Bob. You just can't do it. I can't imagine a baby Bob. Steve's an old person's name.
Margaret.
Yeah. Quentin.
Ooh, I think that's
actually,
like that's a young, posh man he's a bit of a debonair, you know?
Yeah. Financial advisor, Quentin.
Yeah, definitely financial advisor.
Well, at the moment, PSG needs some financial advice because they've fallen almost 1,000 gold behind Fnatic early on.
Beautiful segue.
Thank you very much. I felt that I'd just taken us off topics so much that I needed a good way of going back to it.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the Akali. Because I think that it's important that we keep track of her throughout the game, because it's important that she does get ahead during the laning phase. And right now, White Knight's doing a great job of playing around the level 6. Notice that Kikis was forced underneath his turret around the level 6-7 mark because of the way in which White Knight had set up the lane. That means that Kikis couldn't take advantage of that big level spike. Now he's been able to go back and pick himself up a fair amount of magic resistance. Kikis is going to be looking to get himself early on the Hextech Gunblade because of how well Akali scales off of both AD and AP. Therefore, what White Knight is doing is just mitigating the possibility of Kikis getting this early snowball. You have good wave clear with the Riptide, building a lot of defenses early on is going to mitigate her early snowballing potential. And the fact that he's actually not even been able to complete his Hextech is also going to stymie his ability to get this early snowball.
How much does Akali rely on that snowball, though? Because in the days of yore, you know, Season 2, Season 3, when we were seeing a lot more Akali, she really needed that snowball to get herself going in the lane and be able to be a threat later game. Is it still like that? Or even if she just goes even in lane, just farms up, doesn't get any kills, doesn't get any assists, is she going to be able to actually be a threat in that 1v1 lane?
You have to think of Akali like any other assassin, right? In the sense that if you're going to pick an assassin, you're picking it for the purpose of being able to kill stuff.
Yeah.
And you have a much better ability to kill stuff than other champions do. So when you weigh up the value of Akali versus Nautilus, if Akali isn't snowballing and isn't at a point with which she very easily kills everything, then why would you pick her over, say, something like Anar, who has a lot of team fight value? And that's the risk that you run when picking a champion like this, because White Knight, if he doesn't concede any kills, if that Akali doesn't get 2-3 kills early on, then White Knight's value in team fights is always going to be stronger than that of Akali.
Fnatic doing a good job of controlling the map at the moment, though. PSG don't really realize how much vision there is in their jungle. 3 wards down on that bottom red side, a couple of wards down on the blue side, another buff stolen for Amazing, and Kyrie steps forward. He's got, you know, 1 control ward over here, but across the board, Fnatic just have much more awareness of where PSG are and how they're playing, and this is the Fnatic early game we much more expected to see. It's been bot lane focused, which is strange for them, not usually where they put their priority, but it has still been Amazing, prioritizing ganking, prioritizing trying to get his lanes ahead.
I like I think part of the reason as to why we've seen so much bot focus from PSG is, number one, look how extended Cly and Rylai's are, which means that if they play too aggressively, that means that Kyrie can come in for a flank and it's very easy for them to get a couple of kills. Mountain Drake is also the first Dragon that's actually available. And also, if Kyrie tries to gank top onto Kikis, there's the possibility of him actually getting the turnaround kill and just instantly shutting down Kyrie, because he has no magic resistance. He is a very squishy target for a level 9 Akali. So I think it's very much, let's not risk it, let's just leave White Knight to 1v1. He's very capable of being able to just hold his lane. He has a lot of experience. Someone coming from Season 3, someone who is a pro player, I should say, back in Season 3, definitely understands this matchup a fair amount. And so for right now, just look at all this vision invested from Fnatic. They want to invest a lot into making sure that their bottom lane is healthy and that they can always play around the possibility of Kyrie coming in for a gank.
Game's settled down a little bit here. Going to see a gank in the mid lane as Blank takes the Chaos Storm. Sanguine Pulse probably going to get mech knocked up by Amazing, but the flash does come out and Blank gets himself to safety. Still a slower game. It's what we've seen between these two teams. The early game, it tends to be one team taking a slight lead and then the other team settling, turtling slightly and accepting that they can't quite take fights for the time being. White Knight's starting to scale up though. He's got a lot of magic resist with the Mercury Treads and the Spectre's Cowl.
This is what we saw from Fnatic in Game 1. Part of it was for Amazing, struggling, but the difference here is that it was really important for Amazing to get these early ganks off at the bottom half of the map, because remember, PSG should have had a pushing lane with Varus and Misfortune. They also should have had a pushing lane mid with the Vladimir, and both of those lanes got ganked, which means now Nisqy gets himself the early Hex core so he can match the push. Rylai's and Cly, because of the early advantages that they had gained, can now much better trade. So now Fnatic Academy actually have 2.5 pushing lanes, depending on how aggressive Kikis chooses to be. So Amazing's done his job in the early game. Now his laners are building up just natural advantages over time. And so there's no real need for them to be too greedy, too overzealous, and give a window for PSG to fight back.
Good agreed here from Amazing though as he tries to get towards Kyrie. And Nisqy's coming in for the flank as well. It's going to be a smite fight. Kyrie will secure the red buff for himself. Brambleback, they're called. Red Brambleback.
The red buff is what I call it.
Same.
The fiery thing that makes enemies slow. Which I'm not even sure it does anymore. I seem to remember a change that happened a while back to that red buff. Regardless, let's move back to the top half of the map. My favorite matchup of all. Kick is actually going pretty aggressive onto White Knight right now. But he ends up losing the trade. And this is probably something I should have explained a little bit more earlier on. Yes, Akali is a really fun champion, but into Nautilus, she actually doesn't do that much. Because it's a tank that just wave clears, and every time you go in, he CCs you, and he just leaves.
Being informed by production that red buff does still slow.
Ah, great.
So that
Perfect,
yeah.
perfect, perfect, perfect.
Perfect for Kyrie. That's what he wants to be able to do, to chase people down. Hasn't really had that much of an impact. We saw him down towards that bottom side, but fallen a little bit behind in terms of experience and CS, although creep score is not the best marker of a jungler's focus at the moment because of those Krugs. He's going to come up towards top side. Depth charge knocked onto Kikis, has the flash, will try and get across the wall. And because PSG don't know where Amazing is, they can't continue the aggression in that top lane.
Now, one of the things that Akali does lack is wave clear. So now with Amazing, they're moving up to the top side. Maybe they can net themselves a kill.
That would have been spicy. It looked like actually Kikis was going to come all the way around as well, but a ward spots them out. And PSG will be able just to back themselves away.
So now we return.
It's just wave clear at the moment. It's just wave clear. What are the teams waiting for, though? Because a lot of people will think, oh, this game's slow, you know, no one's able to do anything. People are just not getting caught out. You know, it's not Bronze 5 solo queue. But both these teams are waiting for something to happen before they can start to pull the trigger and take those fights. Well,
Akali is waiting for... It's very much like when you have slow games, it's very much about teams waiting for item spikes. But also, it's just naturally difficult to force a play because the best place, excuse me, for Fnatic Academy to try and force something.
Let me take this over for a second.
There we are. I've got it now. I've got it. I'm good. Yes. The best place for Fnatic Academy to try and force something is actually down in the bottom lane because of the low mobility of both Boris and Miss Fortune. If you're going to set up a successful dive, that'll be the place for you to do it. However, the risk you run is if you have White Knight TP in and all, you've got 4 members trying to dive this turret, then it can very quickly swing in the favor of PSG. You can't really dive a Nautilus top lane. That's just too much of a risk. What you could do is if your PSG is dive bot.
Kickers flashes away straight away, but Blank is here as well. Ignite there, no flash for him. The heal used, Raleigh trying to get away, will flash. Hemo Plague will continue with him. They won't have enough damage to take him out. They might look towards this first tower, though. This is something we've seen PSG be a lot better at over the last couple of weeks. Since White Knight have joined, they have 100% of the first towers in their games. Of course, losing last game, so they've ruined that record. But they can continue it at about 87% or so.
The problem is for PSG is that because they didn't have a minion wave when they'd actually set up for that dive, Niski was able to push up mid, and they've actually been able to successfully trade this objective. And when you think about overall map control, it's definitely going to be in the favor of Fnatic Academy. Now,
you're so excited, Vedius. You're so excited.
The stats guys brought me this great stat for Akali, and even though I am excited about her, she's yet to have some competitive success. But
however, has only been played in the LPL in China and in the CB LOL in Brazil. Yes. So we haven't seen it in Europe or in NA, you know, the regions perhaps that are closer to the meta that we see in Challenger Series. Kaide's going to get jumped on here, does have the flash, will try and get back towards his tower. Still pretty high HP, but the 3 members of Fnatic and Amazing will tank. Niski trying to chase in, the TP comes down, Mr. Rale's going to jump forward, and Kaire's going to go down. Fnatic Academy get their 3rd kill of the game.
So a very swift collapse from Fnatic Academy. Their focus was taking down this tier 1 turret down in the bottom lane. Kirei just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he ends up giving away his life. Meanwhile at the top, Kikis, his constant pressure pushing into that tower along with White Knight backing in an unfortunate time will also result in another tower going in their favor in the top lane. So Fnatic, they're looking to clean sweep all 3 of these towers.
Towers across the map just going for Fnatic here. It seems like it's been an explosion of activity after a very slow first 15 minutes. And that first tower, I have to admit, I'm slightly surprised. I didn't think Kikis would be able to force White Knight back that much, get that much chip damage down, that he just can take the tower.
Well, you have to remember that in extended trades, Akali will always be the one to come out on top, especially with the sustain that she does get on her passive. The big thing to bear in mind as well was that the setup for PSG with that dive down bot, we did talk about it earlier on, but the fact that they ended up losing that mid tower so quickly after they got that bot tower just opened up the map for Fnatic Academy, because now every time Niski pushes in that wave, you don't have the tower to absorb the minion wave. It's getting pushed deeper back. Blanc has to deal with the entire wave, and it gives Niski more freedom to move around the map, so he can move around bot. he can group up with his team. They can look to siege onto these other objectives. And it will now result in a 3,000 gold lead going in favor of Fnatic Academy. But I'm surprised as to how little value this dragon has actually been put down to, because I feel like Fnatic were actually in a great position earlier on to try and contest it. They had pushing lane mid, they had pushing lane bot. They could have brought the Akali down, and instead they've just been buying time. They don't want to try and force a fight this early on in the game.
They do have teleport advantage now, of course, because White Knight used his and then cancelled it in the last time, so maybe we'll see it happening. Mr. Rallis here in the mid lane trying to defend, but can't defend against the flash, and here comes Blank as well. Rallis just swiped away. PSG will look for this mid lane tower.
Very swift kill down onto Rallis in the mid lane. Ultimate combined with flank from Blanc and a flank from White Knight. There's nothing you could do. You didn't have your flash available, you had the heal, but what's the point? Oh, you didn't even have the heal. So,
this could be a dragon as well for you.
So there we are. Dragon now finally an objective that PSG can take. And this is the exciting thing about this series, right? Like, regardless of what happens, the other team is always quick to respond. Now, what Fnatic are doing is they're responding by getting themselves the Rift Herald, but this has been spotted out by White Knight.
Seen very low priority on Rift Herald across Challenger Series. Of course, on Akali, it can do quite a lot. Kai will come and defend, and that will be the Rift Herald buff being given across towards Akali. I will give you 100 points, Vedius, if you can remember the name of Rift Herald buff.
The Rift Herald buff is called the Purple Void thing. So here we have the dive down in mid lane. Yeah, there was the dive in mid lane.
And that's the pick potential you have from PSG, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was also just well coordinated too. The fact that they all hard committed underneath the tower, irrespective of the positioning of Fnatic, they knew they had the damage to just kill Rallis and get out.
For any of you lore buffs out there, Glimpse of the Void. The Rift Herald buff.
Allows you sight into the abyss of which the Baron arose.
Yeah, it's like, you can see, he's the Herald, so you can see what he has been brought here to tell us, which is about Baron Nashor.
See, if I were to get that, you know, they're just like, hey, have a glimpse of the void, I'd be like, all right, sure, why not? Ah!
Exactly, yeah. It would scar you for the rest of your life. Look at Kassadin. Scarred for the rest of his life by having that glimpse of the void. But I'm sure Akali will only be trying to inflict scars on Paris Saint-Germain. Hextech Gunblade, finished, alongside Negatron Clunk, building up slowly, bit by bit. What's the itemization path that you expect to see coming out from this Akali?
Very likely to be an early Zhonya's afterwards as well. Sometimes you can go for the Rylai's if you just want a bit more sticking power onto your opponents, but normally the Gunblade is effective enough because of the slow that the active does give you. On top of that, you also want to get yourself a fairly early Void Staff because of how well it synergizes with her kit and how often people itemize magic resistance against her. And then you'll sometimes see a Lich Bane, sometimes see a Death Cap, it depends. Both items are pretty good, but the Lich Bane is much better for split push Akali, whereas Death Cap gives you a lot more burst and just upfront damage.
I want to come back to Kikis. We talked a lot about Akali, but not so much about Kikis this game. Been playing the game for an incredibly long amount of time, very experienced. 2011 was his first competitive games at the Cyber Games, World Cyber Games. He played against the NA All-Star teams, including names like Chowster, Xpecial,
wow,
Dyrus, St. Vicious, and Reginald.
That was a long time ago.
Incredibly long time ago, but it speaks to the wealth of experience he has as a player and the wealth of experience he has at carrying his team. Across this split, he has done 30% of his team's damage from the top lane, which is an exorbitant number when you compare it with some of the other top laners who do, on average, about 20%. He is a pure carry threat for this Fnatic Academy roster, and giving him this Akali and giving him the ability to split really puts the pressure onto White Knight, who has been seen as that, once again we're going to use the pun, White Knight for Paris Saint-Germain.
Right now he's at a pretty significant deficit, with Kikis having a level advantage over him, about a level and a half, a 50 CS advantage as well, and now we actually see White Knight TPing to the top lane.
Trying to get on towards Amazing, we'll lock him up for the time being, but the Strangled Thorns forces them away. PSG going for the tower here, however, Kikis is going to get some damage down on towards this bot lane turret in response, and there's no ability for PSG to react, so Kikis can just do what Nisqy did last game and continue to push in.
I don't agree with that TP. I think that even if you'd gotten yourself a kill, it wouldn't have necessarily resulted in getting that tier 2 tower in the top lane, unless you kill Nisqy, who's the main wave killer on the side of Fnatic Academy, which means that you're just sacrificing a tier 2 tower in the bottom lane. The chances of Kikis being able to dive you is very low. So sure, it guarantees you the tier 1, but I don't think it works out.
Pilot overextended once again. He's going to get caught out and taken down by Rallis. That smacks of the pilot of old. Did have his flash available as well. Could have jumped out of that situation.
Surprised he didn't flash. Did use the ultimate, but to no avail. Very surprising from Pilot. Good gank from Fnatic Academy regardless. But it will be another kill. Allows Fnatic to get more deep vision down in the bottom half of the map. Kikis can continue to play as far out as he would like. And having Fnatic Academy, they're feeling very happy. Their 1-4 is setting up nicely. Kikis now level 15. Probably going to go back and buy a couple of items. You have your primary wave clear, the Trinity Force being picked up as well. Lost Chapter about to be done for Nisqy. Fnatic are in a great spot.
A very strong spot, and it's actually a position we haven't seen PSG be in a lot of the time, which is being behind coming through the mid game and into the late game. Usually they win out the early portion of the match so much that they can make a couple of mistakes as we get later on into the game and still win because they have that gold lead. Here they sit 4,000 gold behind it, the 24-minute mark. They've lost 4 towers to 3, and there's so much on the back foot. Is their mental fortitude strong enough for them to be able to actually win out a game after being this far behind?
One would assume so.
Assumption though, Vedius.
Yes, but you asked me, what do I think? And I believe that yes, they do. And that is unfortunately based on an assumption. Given the experience that they have on the roster and given the fact that they know what defeat is like, we talked about how they started off at the split with a rough start and have grown from that point. Clay now taking a lot of damage.
Caught up, Clay's taken out. PSG get the flank off and get the kill.
I don't know why these
not
players
using
aren't
flash,
flashing.
yeah.
I guess they just feel confident. This hook won't kill me. It'll be fun. Like, you may not have been able to see it, which is fair enough, but I think out of just safety and respect, you should have thrown out that flash. Now what I want to see, though, is Blanc being moved off to a side lane. I think you should have the Vladimir matching up against the Akali. I think he's really the only one that can at this point. The big issue that PSG are going to struggle with is the fact that White Knight is only level 13. He's behind both Nisqy and Kikis. He's been denied a lot of farm. He hasn't really been able to outtrade the Akali. But now you could see a very interesting cross-map play. Look at all the vision that Fnatic have over the top side of the map. While it will result in a Mountain Drake, there was the possibility of them going for the Baron, but instead they decided not to risk it.
White Knight's going to step forward here, will be spotted by Kikis, sides against it. And there is a little bit of vision around that Baron for PSG, so they know it's a possibility. They just pinged it as well. But Fnatic have just cleared out all of the awareness that PSG had on this side of the map. That entire area is dark to them, leading up towards the river. Across the river, they have a tiny bit of vision, but Rale's going to be the one that Blank face checks into, and that's probably the best target for him. They're going to try and retreat away here as the rest of PSG join. Blank does have his flash if he wants to jump away. Proto Belt first. There is the Misfortune ultimate as well, across the side. But
just a bit of zoning to deter Fnatic from committing to that fight. Fairly short cooldown ultimate, so it won't hurt PSG too much. Their priority now is to just run it down mid. You can see the Kikis just going to move very swiftly back off to a side lane, get that push going in their favor. They have a big minion wave pushing down bottom, the White Knight's likely going to have to go and deal with.
We're talking about who deals with Kikis at the moment. You said Blank is probably a good possibility. This is one of the times where you wonder about summoner spell choice for this Vladimir, because he went for the Ignite. If he took the teleport, perhaps he would have been able to go into that lane with a little bit less risk for his team, because it means that Kikis, you can match the teleport from Kikis going into the lane. But here, if it ends up being Blank who tries to deal with that Akali, there's always the possibility Fnatic just force a fight on the other side of the map. Kipis is going to jump onto Kyrie here. Look at the damage coming back down onto him. True Shot Barrage is not enough, and Fnatic will just retreat.
So Kikis, instead of going for that early Abyssal Scepter, wisely decides to shift it up into a Zonya's Hourglass. Keeps him alive right there. Few ultimates did get burnt from PSG. This is the go signal for Fnatic, and they're taking this Baron quick.
Hemoplague is up, though, so Blank can try and get in. That Baron's solo get taken out. Now Fnatic are in the back of the pit. PSG can continue the chase here. Blank's going to jump forward with the Proto. And the flash is out from Fnatic. Everyone gets out safely, and the Baron goes down. 5,000 gold lead to Fnatic. Very
swift Baron for Fnatic. Kire was nowhere near the pit in order to steal it away. Good vision control from Fnatic meant that they knew full well where the members of PSG were as they tried to approach that Baron pit. They knew that the ultimate was down for both Pilot and Spraddle. Good decision-making and clean execution from the side of Fnatic, and now you have to wonder who's going to deal with Kikis off in a side lane with all these Baron-empowered minions. He's level 16. 0-0-0 as of right now. but he's likely going to come back with an early Void Staff. So this makes a lot of sense. His dueling power is going to be extreme. There is going to be very few options for the side of PSG now to be able to deal with this assassin off on the side lane.
And it's Fnatic setting up the 1 and 4 we talked about in picks and bans. PSG have never been able to get that team fight they really wanted. They've caught off members here and there, but they haven't been able to force around objectives. Fnatic Academy have been the ones denying vision and playing to their strengths. However, we said this in the last game. We said that Fnatic were playing better at certain points and PSG were never really able to get the fights they wanted, and PSG still surprised us and were able to come up with a win. Admittedly, they weren't 6,000 gold behind, but they still managed to take the victory at the end of the day.
And it was off the back of a big fight in the favor of PSG, and they still have that win condition. But I'm just looking at these levels, I'm looking at all the pushing lanes, and I'm just thinking that for PSG, it's really going to be difficult.
Kikis is going to go in. Smuttle's there as well. Kikis jumps back out. And that's going to be the tower falling. Kikis will sustain up with that twin disciplines that you were talking about earlier on, that passive she has, and they force mid as well. Chain of Corruption onto Nisqy. Blank's going to jump forward, looks for the kill. Can't quite get it, even with the Hemo Plague. White Knight splashed as well. Depth charge comes down, but Fnatic are collapsing around this fight. PSG are low, flies off towards the side. Nisqy's escaped. Where is the Akali? Kikis can always teleport in. At the moment, he's gone back. And PSG, although they burnt a lot to try and get that fight, get nothing from it.
Been a lack of coordination there from the side of PSG. Not something that we've really criticised them much for. I mean, early on in the split, definitely, but with the arrival of White Knight, their communication and their setup seemed to be a lot better, but we had Pilot flash in, Blanc very slowly afterwards, then goes in with his ultimate, then White Knight flashes in with the ulti. The fact that they weren't on the same page of trying to get that kill makes you wonder how the team is doing. They're at a pretty big deficit and they're slowly being bled out. The difference was in game one, they had a lot of momentum in the fact that she controlled a lot of the game, but in this game, they've actually had no control over the map. Yep. It's always been Fnatic punishing the mistakes of PSG and then utilizing their composition exactly the way that they need to.
And part of it is PSG perhaps just being a little bit antsy, just wanting to pull the trigger, wanting to take a fight and forcing things that they shouldn't be. Now, Fnatic have grouped up as a 5, and this might be PSG's opportunity. No Hemo Plague, though. They're going to jump in. Kick is low. Look at Kai on the back line. He manages to flash away. And Fnatic will escape today.
And there are no flanking wards for PSG, so they can't utilize the TP on White Knight. He won't get shot out by the True Shot Barrage, but PSG, they hold on to their base. Very similar to what they were able to do in game one of this best of 5. And while Kikis, yes, you're very strong as an Akali. 3 items completed, level 17. Sitting underneath that tower is very difficult as a one-man unit.
Yeah, Twilight Shroud won't keep you safe.
No, it will not.
Underneath the tower, you can still get spotted out. PSG do have those 2 Mountain Drakes as well. A couple of the only objectives they've taken this game. And it means that if they do manage to win a fight, they will very quickly burn through towers. They'll very quickly burn through inhibitors and dragons and barons as well. So Fnatic do have to be a little bit cautious, a little bit apprehensive as to how they take these fights, because this is where we've seen Fnatic fail in the past, is when they get into objective fights later on. Sometimes their coordination in team fights doesn't pay off for them at all.
Isn't it a little odd that with 2 Mountain Drakes they burn through objectives? Surely they would rock through objectives.
How do you rock through an objective? Do you expect people to get guitars out and start playing like Sweet Child of Mine or something?
The Rock's a pretty big dude. I could see him easily walking through objectives.
People's elbows all over the place. Can't remember the other Rock's moves.
I don't know any of the Rock's moves. I just know he's a big guy. Bigger than you. Probably the only man bigger than you.
He's massive. Dwayne Johnson is a beast of a human being. And at the moment, Kikis is looking pretty beastly on this Akali. 334 CS, 80 ahead of his lane opponent.
But he hasn't killed anything yet.
He doesn't need to kill things to be good at the game, Vedius.
I mean, that's fair. That's a valid point, but that's all the crowd wants. I told the mums and dads of the viewers to come and watch, and they're like, well, what am I watching right now? He hasn't killed anyone.
However, PSG, we feel like they're at rock bottom at the moment. Nisqy caught out, though, and he's going to get melted down. That is exactly what PSG wanted. They kick out on the 3 count, and now they can defeat the Rock in this wrestling match. I don't watch much wrestling.
PSG do exactly what I requested, and they end up finding a kill. Now, the main wave clear of Fnatic is gone. PSG, their eyes are on this tier 2 in the mid.
Clyde's getting chased off towards the side. They're looking for the tier 2, but Amazing is behind them. Only one minion there. Kick is hooked up. Goes into the Twilight Shroud. Tower low. Amazing trying to get White Knight. Kyrie on the front line. Tower's still alive. Blunt jumps in, taken down. He does get the Hemo Plague out though, and that might be enough. PSG trying to achieve Kyrie's end. It's a double for Kikis, and White Knight now the target. Gonna be a triple. Not gonna go for Spottle. Mr. Rollins will go for the chase, and Kikis TP's in. He's looking for the base. Who cares about the chase when you can take the base, says Kikis. He'll get this inhibitor tower. He'll get this inhibitor, and perhaps he'll help Fnatic get the game.
PSG felt so confident sieging onto that tower, knowing that the main wave clear of Fnatic had gone. They felt that there was no way that Fnatic could answer this siege coming out from them, but instead Kikis, he doesn't end up dying in the fight. Too much chunk damage ends up going down onto PSG as they dive the tower, and now with a turnaround fight in favor of Fnatic, they might look to end the game.
This is all Fnatic needed. Just a couple of kills are enough to help them secure these Nexus towers. Amazing is low, but Spottle just cannot do enough to stop the Fnatic advance. It's gonna be 1-on-1, and we have a series on our hands.
So Fnatic, they are able to pull it back. They utilize the Akali. First win. He gets a bunch of kills right at the end.
You're so happy, Vedius.
So happy. He did so much damage.
It was like a Royal Rumble there, just chucking people left, right, and center over the ropes.
Stop making wrestling references. I don't know it well enough. But regardless, Fnatic had a very clean game. The early kills that they got right at the start, punishing the early flash that was burnt from Spartle, punishing the over-eagerness of Blanc in the mid lane. Perhaps the wave that PSG were riding in game 1, just a little too big for them to handle. Yeah. And they end up getting punished for it in the early game. Fnatic gradually stall things out, and then they get to a point in the game where, sure, it becomes a little difficult for them to siege onto things, but it results in them eventually finding a fight in the mid lane. It very quickly goes in their favor. I don't think that's exactly how they would have wanted to win, but it works, right?
It does, it does. And I think a lot of it comes down to vision control as well, Vedius. You look at how many wards Fnatic had in that red side jungle when they were ganking bot lane. You look at how many wards they had around the Dragon, around the Baron when they wanted to secure it. It was like Fnatic, when they took the Baron in that game, didn't kill anyone beforehand. They just denied vision there for about 4 minutes, and they were like, okay, we can do the objective now.
And just came off the back of good pressure that they had from all the different lanes. Yeah. The fact that Victor could complete his upgraded Hex core game a lot more push. The fact that Ezreal had the item advantage down the bottom lane. And I'm thinking now, throughout the rest of this series, Ezreal is probably going to be one of the most contested picks. Like, while certainly at the very end there, it was the Akali that won the fight in the Fnatic's favor. Having this comfortable bottom lane, having the ability to push and set up for objectives, and the poke that comes out from this Ezreal just seems to be the key determining factor in the team's success.
I think a lot of it relies on the junglers as well. You have to think, like, do you take away the Rek'Sai from Amazing after he's shown how much you can do on it in the early game there? Do you keep Kirei on the Graves if you're PSG? Do you say, yeah, we can still have a scaling jungler later on into the game? Or do you need to play someone who's a little bit more aggressive early on?
Well, perhaps, but the thing for Kirei is he's never really been that aggressive jungler. Like, he certainly has played Rek'Sai in the past, and it would be easier to set up for ganks with the Rek'Sai as well. But I think that what we're also seeing now is that when Kikis gets his hands on a carry, he has a lot more control over the pace of the game. He can look to make a lot more plays. And Ralez and Amazing, they just seem to really step up in this game too. So we expected a close series. Game 1 was rather long, very back and forth. Game 2 a little bit more one-sided towards Fnatic. But now we're guaranteed at least 2 more games. And looking ahead, I think that PSG need to shape things up, because now, for the second time in a row, they started off with the Nautilus pick, they transitioned that into Graves, and I'd like to see what else PSG can bring out in their repertoire.
I think a lot of it comes back to PSG being a team that are used, it sounds really bad, they're used to failing. They're used to losing games. Like, they lost their first 5 games of the split. And the question then becomes, how do you adapt? How do you change? They are so used to losing and then coming back and winning later on, that I think this won't be too big of a setback for them. I don't think this will be too big of a hump on the road for PSG to get to those promotion tournaments.
We'll have to see as we jump into game 2.
And we did, with Fnatic tying the series 1-1. We'll take a short break, but when we come back, the teams are getting ready for the 3rd game of this matchup.
Sorry, when I think one...
No top lane focus for him. He wants this misfortune. Exhaust comes down, but there's the knockup, there's the root, and there's the first blood for Fnatic Academy.
Keep tanking it. Careful TP. The TP, we turn on TP, turn on TP. Get turret, nice. Get turret. Nice you meet. I will exhaust blood. Get out, get out, get out, get out.
I
Get
got
out.
the overwall.
Get out.
I'm fine, I'm fine.
Varus. Now,
Not this,
now.
not this, not this.
Push
Not
me.
this.
Use sport side. TP bot, TP bot, TP bot,
TP bot.
TP bot. Chase this guy. TP bot.
Stop the Fnatic advance. It's gonna be 1-on-1, and we have a series on our hands.